They tied her in the cowboy's tree. The Apache woman thought he would use her, but instead he. The sun was low in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the rolling plains near the small frontier town. Birds called from the distant trees, and the wind whispered softly through the grass. The Apache woman, exhausted and frightened, huddled beneath the gnarled branches of a large tree. Her wrists were tied with rough rope, the knots biting into her skin, and she could feel the cold setting in as the evening approached. Her heart raced, and her thoughts were full of fear. She had heard stories, terrible stories, of what could happen to someone left alone in the wilderness. Every noise in the distance made her flinch. She tried to stay calm, but it was hard. Her mind kept racing. "Why me?" she thought. "Why did they leave me here?" She had no idea who the men were who had tied her to the tree or what they wanted. She had never done anything to them personally. All she knew was that she was alone and vulnerable. Her hands were raw from struggling against the rope, but the harder she fought, the tighter the knots seemed to become. For a long time, she stayed still, trying to make herself as small and quiet as possible. She listened to the sounds of the prairie, the rustling of the grass, the distant call of a hawk, the occasional snapping of a branch under the weight of some unseen animal. She did not know if anyone would come to find her. Night would soon fall, and the darkness terrified her. She had no weapon, no food, and no way to defend herself. Just as the fear seemed overwhelming, she noticed movement at the edge of the clearing. A figure was approaching slowly, walking carefully over the uneven ground. He wore a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face, and his clothes were dusty and worn from long days on horseback. The Apache woman froze. Her first thought was that this man might be one of the men who had left her tied to the tree. Her chest tightened with fear, and her mind raced with all the terrible possibilities. The man stopped a few yards away, his eyes scanning the area with caution. He spoke, but his voice was calm and steady, not harsh or threatening. "Are you all right?" he asked. The question startled her. It was not the tone of someone intending to hurt her. Her instincts told her to stay silent, but a part of her hoped that he might help. She hesitated, unsure if she could trust him. Finally, she managed to speak, her voice trembling. I don't know," she said softly. "They left me here. I don't know who you are." The cowboy nodded slowly. "I'm just a man who lives nearby," he said. "I saw you from the trail. You don't have to be afraid." "I'm not going to hurt you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small cloth bundle. "Here," he said, holding it out. "Drink this. It will help you feel better." The Apache woman glanced at the bundle. Inside was water wrapped in a clean cloth. Her throat was dry and her body felt weak, but she remained cautious. Slowly, she accepted the water, her hands shaking as she drank. The cool liquid soothed her throat and gave her a small measure of comfort. The cowboy did not move too close. He understood that she needed space, and he gave her time to calm down. After a few minutes, he knelt down at a safe distance and began to examine the ropes that held her. "These knots are tight," he said. "You've been struggling for a while." The Apache woman swallowed hard, her fear still present. "I had to try," she said. "I couldn't just sit here and wait." He nodded. "I understand," he said. "I'll get you out of here, but I need you to stay calm and let me work. If you move too much, you might hurt yourself more." Carefully, he worked on the ropes, loosening the knots one by one. The Apache woman watched him closely, still uncertain of his intentions but beginning to sense his good intentions. He worked slowly and gently, making sure that she did not get hurt. Each knot that came undone brought a small relief, and she could feel her tension easing slightly. Once the last rope was removed, she rubbed her wrists, feeling the marks left behind. They stung, but she was grateful to be free. The cowboy helped her to stand, offering his steady hand for support. She took it cautiously, testing his sincerity, and found that he truly only wanted to help. "Thank you," she whispered. "I didn't think anyone would come." "You're welcome," he said simply. "You're safe now. Come with me. There's a place nearby where you can rest." As they walked together through the tall grass, the Apache woman began to notice the care in his movements. He kept looking around, alert for any danger, and he adjusted his pace to match hers. He did not rush her, did not ask questions she was not ready to answer. He simply walked beside her, a quiet and steady presence. Along the way, he pointed out landmarks, a small stream where she could drink more water, a patch of soft grass where they could sit if needed, and trees that offered shelter from the wind. She realized that he knew the land very well and that he was skilled at surviving in it. For a moment, she allowed herself to relax. She thought about how much fear had filled her heart just a few hours ago and how different this moment felt. She was still cautious, still uncertain about everything, but she felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps not all men in this territory were cruel. Perhaps there were people who would help when it mattered most. As the sun dipped lower behind the hills, casting the world in shades of orange and pink, the cowboy led her to a small clearing where he had prepared a safe spot for her to rest. He laid out a blanket and gestured for her to sit. "Rest here for a while," he said. "You need to regain your strength." She sat down, her body exhausted but her mind alert. She watched him carefully as he worked around the clearing, gathering small pieces of wood and arranging them to make a simple fire. The warmth of the flames and the gentle crackling sound brought a sense of comfort she had not felt in hours. "You don't have to be afraid of me," he said again, noticing her tense posture. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to make sure you're safe." The Apache woman looked into the fire, thinking about what had happened. She had been so sure that everyone she met in the wilderness wanted to harm her, but this man had shown her kindness, calmness, and respect. She did not understand why he had done this, but she felt a growing sense of gratitude. I don't know what to say," she said softly. "You don't need to say anything," he replied. "Just rest, that's enough for now." As the evening settled in, they sat quietly by the fire. The Apache woman realized that the world was not as cruel as she had feared. There were people who would protect, who would act with care and honesty. She began to wonder about the man who had saved her, his life alone on the frontier, and the experiences that had shaped him. For the first time since being tied to the tree, she allowed herself to breathe deeply, letting go of some of the fear that had weighed on her for so long. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but in this moment she felt a small measure of safety. And as the stars began to appear in the sky above, she understood that trust, even if earned slowly, could exist in the most unexpected places. She looked at the cowboy, who tended the fire with quiet attention, and thought that maybe, just maybe, not all strangers in the wilderness were to be feared. The night had settled over the plains, and the soft glow of the fire painted the clearing with flickering light. The Apache woman sat quietly on the blanket, still unsure what to do next. She had never met anyone like this cowboy before. His calm presence, his careful movements, and the way he had freed her from the tree without any hint of force or impatience left her both curious and cautious. She wanted to speak, but words felt heavy. How could she explain the fear that had filled her heart for hours or the relief she now felt? The cowboy noticed her hesitation and offered a gentle smile. "You don't have to speak if you're not ready," he said. "I can wait. We have time." She studied him carefully. There was something steady about him, something that said he could handle the dangers of the land without losing himself to fear. She thought about the long, empty stretches of prairie and the people she had encountered who had only caused harm. This man was different. He did not demand her trust, yet he acted as if her safety mattered. "Where will I go after this?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't stay tied up in the woods forever." The cowboy shook his head gently. "You don't have to stay here forever," he replied. "But for tonight, this place is safe. Tomorrow we can think about the next step." She nodded, uncertain but willing to accept his guidance for the moment. She could feel her muscles relaxing for the first time in hours, and the tension that had gripped her body began to ease. The fire's warmth seeped into her bones, and she realized she had not eaten in a long time. Hunger gnawed at her, reminding her of the physical toll the ordeal had taken. "I'm hungry," she admitted. The cowboy nodded as if he had expected her to say so. He stood and moved to a small pack he had brought, pulling out a few simple provisions: bread, dried meat, and some fresh water. He handed her the food carefully, making sure she could eat comfortably. She accepted it, grateful for the kindness and the thoughtfulness he had shown. As she ate, the cowboy sat a short distance away, keeping his eyes on the surrounding land. He moved quietly, alert to any sounds in the night. The Apache woman noticed his careful watchfulness. She realized that this man had been alone in this territory for a long time and had learned how to protect himself. It was a skill born of experience, but it was also coupled with a deep sense of care for others, which surprised her. After a while, she felt strong enough to speak again. "Why did you help me?" she asked, still cautious. "You don't know me, you didn't have to stop." The cowboy looked at her for a moment, his expression serious but kind. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. "Anyone in your situation deserves help, that's all there is to it." She considered his words. There was no boastfulness, no hidden motive. He was telling the truth, she realized. It was a simple, honest truth, and it felt rare in a world where people often acted for their own benefit. She nodded slowly, beginning to feel a small sense of trust forming between them. The night passed quietly. The fire burned low, and the sounds of the prairie filled the space around them. Occasionally, the Apache woman would hear the distant howl of a coyote or the rustling of animals moving through the grass, and her body would tense with instinctive fear. But each time she would see the cowboy's calm presence and hear his reassuring words. "It's all right. Nothing will hurt you here." By morning, the sun began to rise, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange. The cowboy tended to the fire, making sure there was warmth to greet the new day. He offered her fresh water and helped her stand, making sure she felt steady on her feet. She noticed how careful he was, his hands steady and his eyes watchful yet gentle. "Are you ready to move?" he asked. She nodded, understanding that staying in one place would not be safe for long. He led her slowly through the early morning light, pointing out landmarks and giving instructions on how to avoid the trickier areas of the land. He taught her which plants could be used for food or medicine, which paths were safest, and how to remain aware of the wind and sounds around her. As they walked, she began to talk more. She told him about her family, the struggles she had faced, and the journey that had brought her to this point. The cowboy listened quietly, never interrupting, never judging. He nodded when appropriate and offered small pieces of advice when it seemed helpful. The Apache woman realized that she was learning more than just survival skills. She was learning about trust, about how to assess someone's character, and about the quiet strength that comes from living with integrity. She noticed the cowboy's attention to detail, the way he treated the land with respect, and the way he treated her with patience and care. At one point, they came to a small stream, its water clear and cool. The cowboy knelt and drank first, demonstrating that the water was safe. Then he gestured for her to drink. She knelt carefully, cupping her hands and letting the water wash over her face. The cold water refreshed her, and she felt a renewed sense of strength. "You're learning quickly," the cowboy said, smiling slightly. "You've got good instincts and you listen well. That will help you stay safe." She smiled faintly in return, a sense of pride mixed with gratitude. For the first time since being tied to the tree, she felt that she was not completely helpless. She had guidance, protection, and someone who genuinely cared about her well-being. The morning passed, and they continued walking through the rolling plains. Along the way, the cowboy shared stories of the land, how the seasons changed, which animals moved where, and how to find shelter in case of sudden storms. He taught her to notice small details, the direction of the wind, the patterns in the clouds, the subtle sounds of animals moving nearby. The Apache woman absorbed everything, realizing that survival was not just about strength but about awareness and patience. She began to feel more capable, more confident in her ability to navigate the world around her. And through it all, the cowboy remained a steady presence, offering guidance without taking control, giving advice without demanding obedience. By midday, they reached a small clearing with a cluster of trees that offered shade and protection. The cowboy helped her sit down and encouraged her to rest. He gathered some sticks and started a small fire, preparing a simple meal for them both. She watched him work with care, noticing how methodical and thoughtful he was. "You're good at this," she said softly. "I've had practice," he replied with a small smile. "It's not just about cooking, it's about making sure you're safe and comfortable. That matters more than anything else." As they ate, the Apache woman reflected on the events of the last day. She had been tied to a tree, unsure if anyone would help her. Now she was walking with a man who had saved her life and was teaching her how to survive in the wilderness. She realized that appearances could be deceiving and that courage and kindness could come from the most unexpected places. The rest of the afternoon passed with quiet conversation and observation. The cowboy taught her how to make a simple shelter from branches and leaves in case of rain, how to find safe water sources, and how to remain aware of the wind and weather patterns. She listened carefully, asking questions when she did not understand something, and he answered patiently. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the land, the Apache woman felt a growing sense of safety and confidence. She had survived the night tied to the tree, and now she was learning to navigate the land with guidance and support. She realized that fear could be tempered by knowledge, and that trust could grow when someone demonstrated care and respect. That evening they built another small fire and sat together quietly. The Apache woman looked at the cowboy, understanding that he had become more than just a rescuer. He was a guide, a protector, and a teacher. She felt gratitude, respect, and a cautious sense of connection. She did not know what the future would bring, but for the first time in a long time, she felt that she was not alone. The night settled in, stars beginning to appear in the sky. The cowboy watched the surroundings carefully, ensuring that no danger approached. The Apache woman sat by the fire, feeling warmth from both the flames and the steady presence beside her. She thought about how quickly her situation had changed, from fear and uncertainty to safety and guidance. She realized that sometimes help came from the most unexpected people, and that trust, though difficult to give, could lead to hope and understanding. The morning sun rose slowly over the prairie, casting a warm, golden light across the tall grass. The Apache woman woke to the sound of birds singing and the soft rustle of leaves. For the first time in a long while, she felt a small sense of peace. The cowboy was already awake, tending the fire with careful hands. He glanced at her and gave a gentle nod. "Good morning," he said softly. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded, stretching lightly. "I did," she replied. "Better than I expected." The cowboy smiled faintly. "Good, you need your strength. Today will be another long walk, but you'll be able to manage it." She studied him for a moment, noticing the way he moved with confidence, but without haste. There was a quiet strength about him, a sense of calm even in the open wilderness where danger could appear at any moment. She had learned so much from him already, the way he watched the surroundings, the way he moved, and the small gestures that showed he truly cared about her well-being. After a simple breakfast of bread and fresh water, the cowboy gestured for her to follow. They walked carefully through the prairie, the tall grass brushing against their legs. The Apache woman noticed how the cowboy kept checking their path, observing the land for any signs of danger or obstacles. She realized that he was teaching her not only how to survive, but also how to see the world with awareness. "Why do you live alone here?" she asked after a while, curiosity breaking her silence. The cowboy glanced at her, considering the question. "I've always preferred it," he said finally. "Life in town can be complicated. Out here I know the land and I know how to take care of myself. But I've also learned that being alone doesn't mean ignoring others. Helping someone in need, it's just part of being human." She nodded slowly, thinking about her own life and the hardships she had faced. She realized that he had experienced challenges too, but had chosen kindness rather than harshness. There was a lesson in that, one that went beyond survival. As they walked, the cowboy pointed out plants and small animals along the way. "These berries are safe to eat," he said, plucking a few and handing them to her. "But don't eat too many. Too much at once can upset your stomach." She accepted them, grateful for the practical guidance. She began to pay closer attention to the details around her, the sound of the wind, the shapes of the trees, the patterns in the grass. She noticed how the cowboy adjusted his path slightly to avoid uneven ground or hidden holes. Each movement was deliberate, each decision thoughtful. After several hours, they came to a small creek with crystal-clear water. The cowboy knelt and drank first, demonstrating that it was safe. Then he gestured for her to drink. She knelt carefully, cupping the water in her hands and letting it wash over her face. The cold water refreshed her, and she felt a renewed sense of energy. "You're doing well," the cowboy said, noticing her steadiness. "You're learning quickly." She smiled faintly, feeling a sense of pride she had not felt in a long time. "I've had a good teacher," she replied. The cowboy chuckled softly, a sound that seemed to blend with the gentle rushing of the creek. "Keep your instincts sharp," he advised. "The land can be unpredictable. Awareness is more important than speed." They rested by the creek for a while, allowing the Apache woman to regain her strength. She watched him as he prepared a small meal, noticing his careful attention to detail. He moved with patience, making sure everything was ready before she ate. She realized that his calm presence was not just about survival. It was a lesson in living with care, thoughtfulness, and respect for others. After they had eaten, they continued their journey. The sun climbed higher and the temperature began to rise. The Apache woman noticed that the cowboy adjusted their pace to avoid exhaustion, and he reminded her to drink water regularly. She appreciated these small acts of consideration, realizing that trust was not built with words alone, but through actions that showed respect and care. As they walked, she shared more about her past, telling him stories of her family, the people she had known, and the challenges she had faced. The cowboy listened quietly, nodding occasionally and offering thoughtful responses. He did not interrupt or judge, and she felt that her words were safe with him. For the first time, she felt comfortable sharing her story, knowing that it would be received with understanding rather than criticism. "Life has not been easy for you," he said softly after a long pause. "But you're strong, you've survived this far, and that shows courage." She looked at him, surprised by his insight. "I didn't think anyone would notice," she admitted. "I thought my struggles were invisible." "They're not," he said simply. "Everyone has challenges. What matters is how you face them. You faced them with bravery even when you didn't think you could." The Apache woman felt a warmth spread through her chest. For so long, she had carried fear, uncertainty, and the sense that she was alone. Now, walking beside this man, she felt a growing sense of hope. She realized that courage was not only about facing immediate danger, but also about trusting others, learning and growing stronger through guidance and support. By mid-afternoon, they reached a small grove of trees that offered shade from the sun. The cowboy gestured for her to sit while he tended the fire and prepared a simple place for them to rest. She watched him move with quiet confidence, noticing the thoughtfulness in every action. "You can rest here for a while," he said. "The sun is strong, and it's better to conserve your energy." She nodded, grateful for the care he showed. As she rested, she observed the surrounding land and reflected on the journey so far. She had been tied to a tree, unsure if anyone would help her, and now she was walking through the wilderness with a man who had shown her safety, guidance, and patience. She realized that trust, though difficult to give, could lead to new possibilities and understanding. The cowboy sat nearby, watching over the area while allowing her space. Occasionally, he would point out interesting details, the direction of the wind, signs of animals in the distance, and how to read subtle changes in the terrain. Each observation was a small lesson, and she absorbed them eagerly. As the afternoon turned to evening, the sky filled with soft shades of pink and orange. The Apache woman felt a growing sense of connection, not just to the land, but to the man who had saved her and was teaching her how to navigate it. She realized that courage and kindness could come from unexpected places, and that strength was not always shown through force but through care, awareness, and patience. When the sun finally dipped below the horizon, they prepared a small fire and settled in for the night. The Apache woman felt exhaustion in her body, but also a quiet sense of peace. She was not alone, and she was learning to trust someone who had proven himself through actions, not just words. The cowboy watched the surroundings carefully, making sure they were safe. The Apache woman sat by the fire, reflecting on the events of the day. She had learned how to walk through the land, how to observe carefully, and how to trust someone who had shown consistency, patience, and understanding. For the first time in many days, she felt that she had a chance at safety, guidance, and perhaps even friendship. As the stars appeared in the night sky, she realized that her journey was far from over, but she was no longer alone. With the cowboy beside her, she felt a renewed sense of hope, and the knowledge that survival was not only about facing danger but also about finding guidance, learning from it, and growing stronger each day. She closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the quiet sounds of the prairie and the steady presence of the cowboy. In that moment, she understood that trust could be earned, courage could take many forms, and that even in the wildest places, kindness could exist. The morning broke slowly, painting the prairie in soft shades of gold and pink. The Apache woman woke to the gentle warmth of the sun and the faint smell of the small fire the cowboy had tended overnight. For the first time in many days, she felt a sense of calm. She had survived, she had food, water, and safety, and she was walking beside someone she could begin to trust. The cowboy was already awake, checking the land carefully for signs of danger, his eyes scanning the horizon as he moved with quiet confidence. "Good morning," he said, noticing her stirring. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded, stretching lightly. "Yes, I feel rested," she replied. There was a small smile on her face one she hadn't shown in a long time. "Good," he said. "Today we'll continue moving, but I want to keep you safe. Stay close and watch everything around you." The Apache woman nodded, her mind alert but calm. She had learned to follow his lead, to watch, to listen, and to move carefully. He wasn't commanding her. He was guiding her, teaching her how to read the land, how to understand the signs of the prairie, and how to protect herself. She was learning more with each step, and a sense of growing confidence filled her. As they walked, the cowboy pointed out small signs in the environment, footprints of animals, the direction of the wind, and areas where the ground might be unstable. Each lesson was practical, meant to keep her safe, and she absorbed them eagerly. She realized that survival wasn't just about strength, but about awareness, patience, and the ability to anticipate challenges before they appeared. Suddenly, in the distance, a small group of people appeared, moving quickly through the tall grass. The Apache woman's chest tightened and her heart began to race. She froze, fearing that these could be the men who had left her tied to the tree. The cowboy noticed her tension immediately. He raised a hand gently, signaling her to stay calm. "Stay close and trust me," he said softly. "We'll handle this carefully." The group was moving toward the clearing, their presence unmistakable. The Apache woman felt a wave of fear but also a sense of hope. She had learned that the cowboy could think clearly under pressure, and his calm energy reassured her. She stayed close to him, her eyes wide, watching his every move. The cowboy moved quietly, positioning himself so that the Apache woman would be shielded from view. He observed the group, noting their direction and pace. "They don't seem to know we're here yet," he whispered. "We need to be careful." The Apache woman held her breath as the cowboy guided them through a narrow path hidden by tall grass and rocks. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated. She marveled at his knowledge of the land and his ability to stay hidden while still monitoring the approaching group. As they reached a small grove of trees, the cowboy paused. "We can wait here," he said. "It's a safe spot, and we can see them without being seen." The Apache woman nodded, her body tense but ready to follow his guidance. She realized that his calm and thoughtful actions were a form of protection, and she felt a growing sense of trust in him. The group of people came closer, unaware of their presence. The cowboy's eyes were sharp, watching every movement. He noticed that they were not aggressive but seemed intent on finding someone or something. The Apache woman's fear began to shift into curiosity. She realized that the cowboy's bravery was quiet and careful, not loud or reckless. He whispered instructions to her, teaching her how to observe without being noticed, how to remain still, and how to use the land for cover. She followed each instruction carefully, learning from his example. With his guidance, she felt capable of facing challenges she had never imagined she could handle. After some time, the group moved past without noticing them. The Apache woman let out a silent breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She looked at the cowboy, a mixture of admiration and gratitude in her eyes. You saved us," she whispered. He shook his head gently. "We worked together. You stayed calm, you listened, and you followed the signs. That helped as much as anything I did." She thought about the ordeal, how fear had once consumed her, and how his guidance had allowed her to face it with courage. She realized that bravery was not always about action alone. Sometimes it was about awareness, patience, and the trust to follow someone who cared. The rest of the day passed with lessons and movement through the prairie. The cowboy showed her how to identify edible plants, how to read the clouds for weather changes, and how to use small sounds in the environment to understand what was happening around them. Each lesson was practical, teaching her not only to survive, but also to feel empowered in the wilderness. As they walked, the Apache woman began to talk more about her life before the ordeal, the family she had left behind, the traditions she cherished, and the values she held dear. The cowboy listened quietly, nodding and asking thoughtful questions. She realized that he was patient and attentive, qualities that made her feel respected and heard. By late afternoon, they reached a small ridge overlooking the plains. The view was breathtaking, with the sunlight casting long shadows across the land and painting the grass in golden hues. The cowboy gestured for her to sit and take in the view. "It's important to appreciate moments like this," he said. "Even in challenging times, there's beauty all around." She looked at the horizon, feeling a sense of wonder she had not felt in months. The land was vast and alive, full of possibilities, and she realized that with guidance and trust, she could navigate it. The cowboy's presence made the experience safe and meaningful. As evening approached, they prepared a small fire in a sheltered spot. The Apache woman helped, gathering small sticks and learning how to arrange them for warmth and comfort. The cowboy showed her how to make the fire safely, emphasizing patience and attention to detail. They sat together quietly, sharing a simple meal. The Apache woman reflected on the day, realizing how much she had learned, not just about survival, but about trust, courage, and respect. The cowboy had demonstrated that bravery could be calm and measured, and that protecting someone was an act of strength and care. "You've taught me a lot today," she said softly. "Not just about the land, but about life." He smiled faintly. "You're learning quickly because you're paying attention. That's what matters. Awareness, patience, and respect, they keep you safe." The Apache woman nodded, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment. She had faced fear, followed guidance, and observed carefully, and she had survived. She realized that the cowboy's patience and skill had allowed her to grow stronger and more confident in herself. As the night settled in, they sat by the fire, watching the stars appear in the sky. The Apache woman felt a quiet sense of peace. She had faced danger, learned valuable lessons, and begun to trust someone who had proven themselves through actions rather than words. For the first time since being tied to the tree, she felt hope. She understood that courage could take many forms, that trust could be earned through consistent care, and that even in challenging circumstances, kindness and guidance could make all the difference. The cowboy watched the surroundings carefully, his eyes alert but calm. The Apache woman sat quietly, absorbing the lessons of the day and feeling a growing connection to the man who had guided her. She realized that her journey was far from over, but she was no longer alone. With the cowboy beside her, she felt stronger, wiser, and capable of facing whatever challenges lay ahead. The night deepened, and the prairie became quiet. The Apache woman reflected on the trust she had begun to place in him, the lessons she had learned, and the confidence she had gained. She knew that she still had much to learn, but she also knew that with careful guidance, courage, and patience, she could navigate the challenges ahead. In that moment beneath the wide-open sky, she understood that trust, patience, and quiet bravery were more powerful than fear. And with the cowboy by her side, she felt a sense of safety and hope that she had not thought possible for a long time. The sun rose slowly over the prairie, bathing the land in soft golden light. The Apache woman awoke with a sense of calm she had not felt in weeks. The night had passed quietly, with only the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant call of birds to break the silence. She stretched, feeling the stiffness in her muscles from the long journey, and looked over at the cowboy. He was already awake, checking their small camp and observing the horizon with quiet alertness. "Good morning," he said softly, noticing her stirring. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded, her lips curling into a small smile. "I did," she said. "Thank you for keeping me safe." The cowboy nodded, a faint smile crossing his face. "That's what anyone should do for another person. Safety matters, and you deserve to feel safe." She studied him for a moment, reflecting on the days they had spent together. She had been tied to a tree, alone and scared, and now she was walking with someone who had guided her, protected her, and taught her about the land. She realized that her fear had transformed into a growing sense of trust and admiration. After a simple breakfast, the cowboy packed up their belongings, careful to leave the campsite as clean as possible. He gestured for her to follow, and they continued their journey across the prairie. The Apache woman moved with a sense of confidence that had been absent when she had first been tied to the tree. She noticed the small details the cowboy had taught her, the direction of the wind, the subtle signs of animal activity, and the gentle rise and fall of the land that indicated hidden trails or obstacles. "Do you think we'll be safe?" she asked cautiously. "I mean, after everything, will people leave me alone?" The cowboy glanced at her, his eyes thoughtful. "Safety isn't something that anyone can guarantee," he said. "But understanding the land, knowing how to move carefully, and having awareness will help you stay out of harm's way. And sometimes, having someone by your side who cares makes all the difference." She nodded slowly, absorbing his words. She realized that safety was not just about avoiding danger. It was about being prepared, aware, and guided by wisdom and patience. And in this moment, she felt that she was learning how to live in a world that had often seemed harsh and unforgiving. As they walked, the cowboy shared more about the land, the patterns of the seasons, the movement of animals, and the ways to find shelter and water in unexpected places. Each lesson was practical, meant to prepare her for the challenges ahead. The Apache woman listened intently, asking questions when she did not understand something, and the cowboy answered with patience and clarity. She noticed that his guidance was not controlling but empowering, teaching her to trust her own instincts while benefiting from his experience. By midday, they reached a small hill that offered a wide view of the surrounding plains. The cowboy gestured for her to sit and take in the view. She looked out over the rolling grasslands, feeling a sense of wonder and accomplishment. She had survived a frightening ordeal, and now she could see the vast, beautiful land stretching before her. "You've done well," the cowboy said gently. "You faced fear, learned quickly, and stayed calm when it mattered most. That takes courage." She felt a small warmth in her chest at his words. Courage had not always been easy for her, but she realized that it came in many forms: patience, awareness, the willingness to learn, and the ability to trust someone when it was safe to do so. They continued walking, moving carefully but with confidence. The cowboy pointed out a small stream where they could rest and refill their water. He showed her how to test the water for safety and how to use natural materials to make the area comfortable for a short break. The Apache woman marveled at his knowledge and skill, understanding that he had spent many years learning how to live in harmony with the land. As they rested, she reflected on the journey they had shared. From the moment she had been tied to the tree, feeling fear and uncertainty, to now, moving with guidance and learning to observe and understand the world, she had grown stronger and more confident. She realized that trust and courage were not given, they were earned, built step by step through experience and careful observation. "Thank you," she said softly, looking at the cowboy. "Not just for saving me, but for teaching me. I feel stronger now. I feel like I can face more than I could before." The cowboy nodded, his expression calm and approving. "That's the point," he said. "Knowledge and awareness give strength. You've taken the lessons to heart, and that makes you capable. You've earned your own confidence." As the afternoon passed, they moved through the prairie together, noticing small signs of life. The tracks of animals, the subtle changes in the grass, the movement of birds overhead. The Apache woman began to recognize patterns, understanding the land in a way she never had before. She felt a connection to the environment that was new and empowering, and she realized that her fear had transformed into respect and understanding. By evening, they reached a small grove that offered shelter and shade. The cowboy set up a small fire and prepared a simple meal for them both. She helped, arranging sticks and learning the careful techniques he had demonstrated. As they ate, they reflected on the journey and the lessons of the day. The Apache woman felt gratitude, not only for her safety, but for the guidance, patience, and respect the cowboy had shown her. "You've taught me more than I expected," she said, her voice quiet but sincere. "I thought I would only survive this experience, but now I feel like I've learned how to live with awareness, courage, and patience." The cowboy smiled faintly. "That's exactly what I hoped for," he said. "Surviving is one thing, but understanding, learning, and growing, that's what matters most." As night fell, the prairie grew quiet. The stars appeared overhead, twinkling in the clear sky. The Apache woman sat by the fire, reflecting on everything she had experienced. She had faced fear, been guided through challenges, learned to observe and understand the land, and had come to trust someone who had shown her kindness and wisdom. She realized that these lessons were as important as any physical skills. They were lessons about courage, trust, and human connection. The cowboy watched the surroundings carefully, ensuring that they were safe for the night. He did not speak much, allowing her space to reflect and rest. She appreciated this, understanding that respect for her thoughts and feelings was part of the guidance he offered. As the night deepened, the Apache woman felt a sense of peace she had not felt in a long time. She understood that the journey ahead would still have challenges, but she no longer felt alone. She had gained knowledge, trust, and courage, and she knew that she could face what came next with confidence. "I feel ready," she said softly, looking at the cowboy. "Ready to face whatever comes next, knowing I'm not completely alone." The cowboy nodded, his calm presence reassuring her. "You are ready," he said. "You've learned, observed, and grown stronger. That's what matters. Remember, courage is not just in action, it's in awareness, patience, and trust. You have all of these now." The Apache woman smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and understanding. She realized that her journey had been about more than survival. It had been about learning to trust, to observe, and to grow stronger through guidance and experience. She understood that the cowboy's role had been crucial, not only in ensuring her safety, but in teaching her how to face life with awareness, patience, and courage. As the stars shone above them, the night air cool and calm, she felt a quiet hope for the future. She had survived fear, learned valuable lessons, and gained trust in someone who had proven themselves through actions rather than words. She knew that the journey was far from over, but she now carried knowledge, strength, and a growing sense of confidence. In that moment, she realized that trust and courage were not given, they were earned. And with the cowboy beside her, she felt capable of facing any challenge, navigating the land, and moving forward with hope and strength. The prairie stretched endlessly around them, a world full of possibilities and lessons. The Apache woman closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the gentle sounds of the night, and felt a sense of connection, to the land, to life, and to the man who had guided her through danger and uncertainty. She understood that even in the most challenging circumstances, kindness, guidance, and courage could light the way. With the cowboy's quiet presence beside her, she felt safe, empowered, and ready to face the future. And for the first time in many days, she allowed herself to hope for all that lay ahead.